Welcome back to Corporate Baggage. Today, Whitney wants to talk about toxic workplaces and toxic people in those workplaces. So that's what we're going to talk about, toxic stuff. But in reality, and all kidding aside, toxic workplaces are one of the reasons why we started the whole Corporate Baggage podcast, because we know from studying culture for decades now how just one person can erode the entire environment, or an entire team could ruin the experience of what is normally an amazing organization. So we are going to do a 2-part series on this one because it's way too much to unpack in one episode. And I thought we could start with, let's just talk about the environment. Let's talk about when the organization, the corporation, whatever you want to call it, is really the driver of toxicity. And so I don't know where you want to start, because we can go on for a long time about this one, but it's super important.
It is. And there are so many layers of it, like a lot of the topics that we unpack. But I think why we wanted to talk about this, maybe we start there, was that we've all worked for an organization, or we've all had a job at some point where we've either loved the team that we're working with, and that's what keeps us there, but the leadership in the organization aren't really hitting the mark, or maybe they're doing some things that we really don't agree with, but we love the people that we're working with and we love the work, so we stay. Or flip that, we love the organization, we love the values, we love the mission, but there's a couple bad actors, there's a couple people, there's peers that we work with that are really not that great to work with.
Right.
So this first part of the series, we're really going to talk more about from the organizational level and you personally. So maybe some of the things that you're seeing or feeling that might be conscious or subconscious that are really impacting you physically.
Well, and I think, you and I have had experiences together, but then obviously independently, where we realized after a year, 2 years, whatever, that we were in a place that was actually toxic. When we went into the company or the organization, we thought, this is healthy, this is a great place for me to be, to grow, thrive, contribute, add value. And then we realized that the organization itself is not all it's cracked up to be.
Yeah. And listen, we've experienced that. I've coached people that have been in this and experienced this, as I know you have as well. And it's really hard. I'm going to say a nice cheesy quote that I know everyone loves. And maybe if you've never heard it, you could take it, which is, you can't see the label of the jar that you're in. And I think that this is fair across many things in our life. But when you're experiencing things, especially in a job where a lot of people, let's be frank, feel that they have to be there. It's rare. You are the lucky ones if you feel like you get to go to work every day. That's great. And I wish that for everyone. And in a lot of ways, I think we felt that. And in a lot of ways, people feel like they have to get up and go to a job. Why not make it the best? And so some of those things that maybe aren't patterns, or you find excuses for because you have to be there.
Okay,
so you have to push through it.
So let's get real up front. I need you to give us an example of, listen, talk about when you've actually figured out that you were in one of these toxic environments.
When I was out of the toxic environment. Because when you're in it, again, I think that when you're in it, you make up excuses. Or for me personally, it was my value. I'm a driven person. I'm going to see this to the end. I'm going to do my best type of thing. And everyone around me is also doing it. So it's a little bit of what I think should be the culture, me personally, all those factors kind of add up, and you don't necessarily see it until you're out of it. But if you're in it, that's why we're here to share some of these things, these signs and signals that you might be seeing or feeling, and for you to go, oh, wait, that's not just me. That's a thing. That's not good. I think that's kind of what we want to share today. And for me, it was, I can't believe I'm going to share this here on the podcast, but it's a little bit of a personal story, which is I was traveling a lot. I was burning the candle at both ends. I was delivering really great results. I was getting promotions. I was doing a really good job. And I was happy with the work that I was doing too. I actually really enjoyed it. And my marriage was struggling. I was getting sick all of the time. I was gaining weight. And all of those things weren't things that I wanted either.
Oh, you didn't want those things?
No. So those things were at opposite ends, right? And so, but I thought, well, as I think a lot of people think, I don't think I'm alone in this, but please someone help me out here, which is I'm sacrificing for my career. This is temporary. I'm going to get to the next thing, right? And then it'll be better. It was newsflash, it was never better because it's this continuous thing. And then when you're finally out of it, you say, wait, I'm not getting sick anymore. I'm having different conversations. My marriage is thriving. I'm healthy. I'm strong. Now, that took a lot of other investment, right, from me personally to do. But it wasn't until I was out of that to really see and say, wait, I'm not getting sick because I'm on a plane all the time.
No.
I'm getting sick all of the time. And when I say sick all the time, I was sick every other week. And that was not healthy. That was not healthy. And so, yeah, being out of it, I think helped me realize, okay, this is not normal. And also that was causing it.
So I've had a similar experience too, but there was something different in a different organization where I realized that, or I thought when I got hired, that they hired me because I had an opinion, a point of view. I had ideas. I was going to not come in and disrupt. That's not my MO. But I was going to come in and really be able to like create some momentum in this department. And at every turn, I would get told, "Well, you can't say that here."
Mm-hmm.
Or if I would find a problem and say, "Oh, I think this is an issue," they go, "Yeah, yeah, that's not the right venue to voice that." But there was no venue to voice the problem that I saw, and so I didn't quickly realize it. It was just like, oh, okay, we don't say that here. Oh, okay, we don't do that here. And the reality is nobody was saying or doing those things. And it was causing, I think, long-term chronic issues within this company because they had acculturated everybody to not say things that were hard, uncomfortable, like anything that would point out that we weren't living the vision, the mission, the values was bad.
It's a quick way. It's a quick way to silence your people. For sure. Just caught so choked up on that one.
Super Joe, fix that in post. Thank you.
Yeah. No, it's a quick way not only to almost indoctrinate a culture, but also a quick way to, this is the subconscious part, is you didn't one day say, oh, well, I'm just not going to speak up anymore. It was a slow burn, I'd imagine.
It was a slow burn because I was really committed to like jumping in, proving my value, my worth. It was when I joined this organization, it was a promotion from the last role that I was in. So I went from like, senior manager to director, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to show that like, yes, I'm director worthy and yes, I'm worthy to work at this company and the new salary and all the things. And so I was willing to, I think, betray what I knew was better work and better practice because I wanted to be seen a certain way. But the reality is that when you're in an environment that requires people to betray themselves in order to fit in, that is like a definition of it being toxic.
And part of this is we're talking about the environments and the organizations that are toxic. And I want to point out one thing that you and I both know, but it's worth pointing out, which is we all do have a role in some of that. We can say no. And what we're pointing out is the environment doesn't make it easy to do that. The environment isn't conducive. The culture isn't conducive to say it's frowned upon, if you will, if you're saying no to those things. So we all do have ownership. We do have individual agency. And there is that subconsciousness, that thing that is there. I think about one of our clients that every year she would run so hard that at the end of the year, she would be sick and tapped out for
Weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah.
And it happened year after year until finally she said, wait, this is not okay. I'm not doing this anymore. But it took her to do that and wake up and see that the company didn't do that for her. She did.
That's right. Well, I think so. This one company that I worked for, they of course won't name. When I was interviewing for them, I should have, of course, hindsight's 2020, but I should have just said no before I went any further. I did an interview where this very, very senior person in the organization asked me a question about, like, hey, what's your opinion on X? And the opinion was a way to develop leaders. That when she said it to me, I recoiled. I didn't physically do it, but like internally, I went, oh my God, that would be the worst possible thing you could do. It's not based in any sort of leadership development practice at all. Any research. It just was this way of saying, how do we as corporate people get all of our leaders to act basically like robots? And they had a name for it, and it was terrible. And if I say it, then everyone's going to know who I'm talking about. So I won't. And I just said, I think that's a terrible idea. I would never do it that way. And here's why. Because what they were proposing would not really embrace every leader's individual way of showing up authentically for their team, for their people, et cetera, et cetera. It just was an exclusive, not an inclusive way of doing leadership development. And I'm not about that.
Mm-hmm.
And so apparently I bombed that part of the interview because I was honest. But what I didn't pick up on it, especially because I went forward, did a few more interviews, got hired and stayed there for a while, is I didn't look at that and say, this is telling you the environment is not embracing inclusivity. It's embracing being exclusive, but not in a healthy way, not in a positive way that really is helping to develop leaders to be better leaders of people. So I already had clues. And in hindsight, I always look back and go, God, Catie, why didn't you see that?
Yeah.
That was it. That was my ticket out. But you can't read the jar, the label of the jar that you're in. So I get it. But it was really in a painful hindsight from me because should have been my wake-up call to say, this is not the place for you. They'll embrace you in the short term as long as you conform. And as soon as you step out of line, which I did, they weren't going to love it.
You heard it here. Your leadership consultants make mistakes too.
We make a lot of mistakes, so you don't have to.
Mistakes, right? So, and listen, a lot of what we're sharing is from experience and from others' experience as well. And it's all to say, like, we're human. And I think especially in a toxic environment, and this is up for your own definition too. We're defining what toxic is for us. But if toxic for you includes, you talked about not being inclusive, not hearing your voice, not understanding that for a lot of people, give another example, like if I need to pick up my kids at 3:00 but I'm going to tune in later, and finish up work, but that's not allowed, that could be toxic for you. Toxic can feel like a strong word, but what we're really talking about is the robotic leadership, the profit over people, that type of environment that's not healthy.
Leaders who are just dictatorial. I know that you and I have done countless culture surveys in companies, and if you look at the overall company score, out of 100, they're scored like a 92, and you go, well, that's amazing. And I always think, like my mom, so what's the other 8% that we're missing? And when you dig down, there's different pockets in the organization. And when you dig down even further, you see these negative scores are really about toxic leadership, the whole environment might be fine, but the micro environment is not.
Well, and that's something that I work with leaders a ton on in my business. And I know you do as well at The Modern. I'm really focused on the root cause of what's going on. Because especially in those surveys and when clients come to us, they're saying things like, I have X, Y, and Z problem. Is it ever that problem? Usually not. It's not that problem because they're talking about the symptom. They're not talking about what's really going on. And they're not talking about what's going on because they're not really looking under the hood and talking to their people.
That's right.
And so when you're really able to do that, example with surveys or anything like that, whether it's a survey or actually talking to people, your results might say one thing, but I bet you if you look at the comments or you have conversations with people, you'll see something different. Not vastly different, but you're able to kind of get into the tea leaves a little bit more to understand what's really at the root of what's going on. So I'll give you an example. Probably one of the clients that I have a handful of clients that this showed up in pretty quickly, which was, oh, we have a problem with hiring people. Okay, let's understand that a little bit. We're having a hiring issue. This was with teachers. So very specific. And it made sense, right? Some of what they were saying, it totally made sense. When I got in and we were talking to people, it was very apparent very quickly that it was a dysfunctional leadership team. But the leadership team was the one coming to us saying, no, but it's them. It's them. It's our HR team. They're not making good hires. There's not a good pool of teachers. We can't get people in this way. It's not our salaries. We just can't find good people. And it was everyone else's fault. But there was a true leadership issue. But they didn't want to look at that. And so I think there's also this piece of are leaders ready to look inward and make the change as well? Because it's one thing to say it's not the symptom, it's the root cause, but are you really ready to look inward and do the work and figure that out?
And I think a lot of times the answer is no, because most leaders don't wake up every day and say, I'm going to go and make people's lives miserable. I'm going to create a toxic, awful work environment. They just don't, because they've been acculturated to do what it is they're actually perpetuating for other people as well. So I think we can also agree that, hopefully we can agree, that most people don't set out to create work environments that way, but it happens over time. It happens because they worked for a terrible boss, they learned or got mentored by somebody who really should not have been in a leadership position, and it just kind of happens over time. And I think your example at the very beginning of this show, where you were talking about, being on the road and getting sick and all that kind of stuff, like everybody else was doing that.
Yeah.
Everybody else was running,
And I thought it was fine too.
80, 90, 100 hours a week. It was the way that we all did it. And it was never healthy. It was never healthy to say, you're going to start work at 6 o'clock in the morning, and you're going to be on and off of planes, and then you're going to facilitate all day, and then you're going to teach this class, and then you're going to do a client dinner, and then you're going to go back to your hotel room, maybe call your partner, spouse, child, children, and then you still have to answer all those emails that you missed for the rest of the day. And, can you add in some self-care? Do some self-care, Whitney, and then get up and do the same thing the next day and do it over and over and over again. Now, not everybody, as you know, travel, but there's a lot of people who get stuck in a pattern of toxicity in their workplace because that's what everybody else is doing. Everybody else is killing themselves in this one particular way, so you do it too. So that you fit in, you do it too so that you're not called out for performance. You do it too because you're trying to be a part of the team, when in reality you're actually perpetuating the toxicity that you're trying to not be, that you're trying to not be a part of.
And it's a subconscious guilt. I mean, a common one that I hear a lot from director, executive level leaders that I coach, which you would think, right? Oh, they're senior level. They'll do whatever they want. They have the agency. They'll do it. No, they still have that subconscious guilt, which is the always on mentality, the responsiveness mentality. And this is, maybe you don't feel this way, but I 100% feel this is true, which is this is cultural based, not personally based. Because although you might feel like, for example, I have a very high sense of urgency. I want to get back to people, but I've trained myself to know that that's not always the case. But if I'm in a cultural environment where that is the case, and I'm actually sometimes punished for not returning a Teams message or an email fast enough, I'm going to have a sense of anxiety when I'm walking my dog during the day.
So let's talk about this, because you and I have experienced this firsthand, but we've also witnessed it in working in organizations. Yeah. And we were just talking earlier today about a colleague who's working at a company where people will literally go onto Slack and say, bathroom break, BRB, And then they come back 2 minutes later and they're like, okay, bio break over. I'm back. What the F are we talking about? Like, these are adults. These are adults. These are not high school kids that are learning how to be professional. These are adults that are feeling like they have to signal when they're taking a piss. Come on. This is ridiculous. But so when people go toxic work environment, we go, oh, no. You got to be responsive. You got to be on. No, people are actually signaling when they're going to the bathroom. That's insane. And, I talked to a coaching client of mine who listens to our podcast. Hi, Mike. Thank you for listening. But asked some questions about why we're talking about what we're talking about. And one of the things he said was, can you talk a little bit about why people, it was in the context of return to office, but why people do like these maladaptive behaviors that turn,
like the mouse jiggler and stuff like that.
That's exactly what he was talking about, is like, why did that happen? And I said, because the environment told them, well, if your light on Teams goes from green to yellow, you must not be working. And he said, well, yeah, people they gotta work and they gotta do their thing. And I said, listen, if someone pops in your office and you're talking to them because you're answering a question about the work that y'all do together, are you inactive? He's like, no. I said, are you working? And he's like, yeah, I'm answering, one of my direct reports questions or a colleague's questions. And I said, so do you need a mouse jiggler or do you need an environment that is supportive of you actually doing your job? And he's like, the latter. But that's exactly right. But we have created these environments and these systems that embrace always on as opposed to just doing great work.
Well, I think that back to the symptom root cause, the symptom is the always on culture. The root cause is lack of trust in the organization.
100%.
And we heard this a ton in one of our social clips and the comments around, well, I'm going to have my toddlers at home and I'm just going to be on and off. And I only work a couple hours out of the day, but I'm getting paid full time. You're the problem.
Right.
Like, you're a part of the problem that is eroding trust at that level, because you're not, as much as you might say that you're getting the results, and maybe you are, but you're not working the job that you're paid to do.
Well, look, the reality is, I don't think companies are ever started by a leader that says, I just want to make people's lives miserable, pay them a little bit, get some value out of them, and we all go home at the end of the day. The reality is, these toxic environments happen because there's a bad actor or two that it's like the two bad apples spoil the bunch. That's exactly what happens. So you wouldn't need the mouse jiggler situation if there weren't people who took advantage of the fact that they could work from home or they could work and no one was looking over their
It evolves over time.
100%. But then people, and I really believe this is true, that people who would normally be the best employees, on time, on like focused, getting stuff done, when they are treated like prisoners, when they're treated like, I can't trust you, when they're treated like children as opposed to adults, we don't just weed out the people who are behaving as children and say, you don't work here anymore. We treat everybody like children. You treat everybody like a kindergartner and stand over them and say, did you wash your hands after they come out of the bathroom?
Mm-hmm.
You stand over them to say, oh, is your Teams light not green? What are you doing?
Yeah.
And so one or two people who spoil it for the rest of us mean that now lots of people work in like concocted toxic environments that should not exist ever. They should never have existed.
Yeah, that's so true. Let's talk about, so we're talking a little bit about the different scenarios.
Yeah.
I want to give and I'm going to read some of these notes that we jotted down. It's very specific things that impact, that you might be seeing, feeling the risks, the cost of toxic workplaces, and then let's unpack what to do about it. So from both ends, like we typically do. So the impact of a toxic workplace is going to be an increased risk of depression, anxiety. These, again, can be slow burns, subtle, different things that are happening. Elevated cortisol levels. This is totally increasing your risk of high blood pressure, heart disease. These are physical things that impact your life. We talked about weakened immune system, weight gain, loss, digestive issues, insomnia, disrupted circadian rhythms. When you're landing at 1 a.m. and then you're facilitating at 7, that's not a normal sleep pattern, and you're doing it week after week. Those are things that add up that are significantly impacting your health, but maybe it's not right away. So that pattern is adding up. So what do we do about it? I want to hit both angles too, from the leadership level and the employee level.
Well, I also just think back real quick.
Yeah, I'm going to hit some of those.
Well, I just think about we just did an episode on benefits, and one of the biggest costs to employers for employee benefits is what? Healthcare.
Right.
And all the things you just listed are the antithesis to healthcare. So employers are spending, millions of dollars a year, or depending on how many employees they have, hundreds of thousands, whatever, dollars a year to take care of their people, offer them healthcare, and then they're creating the environments and the systems that are completely upending any person's ability to really tap into being healthy and productive.
Well, and the direct impact on them, of course, is the cost of benefits that are going up, but they're not seeing that directly. But what they are seeing is the attrition and the cost of rehiring and the morale and people leaving. And so MIT Sloan did a study where they showed that it was 10.4 more times likely that a toxic workplace would contribute to attrition than actually compensation, which is interesting because, a lot of people think about, oh, well, money's the driver, right? Well, again, you're hired for money, but once money might be important when you're signing for the job,
right?
But once you're in there, and what keeps you there is the environment.
That's right.
And for the employer, that is very costly, not just in terms of results and the morale and the people that are there, but to rehire, make good hires. The cost of hiring, interviewing, and onboarding is very expensive.
In this scenario, I would love to look first to the managers, like not just the middle managers, because we love to like support them through what we talk about here. But it's anybody who's leading teams of people. They hire in somebody new. That is your best opportunity to get a sense of, are we healthy?
Fresh eyes.
Right? Fresh eyes. So when somebody comes in and they start asking questions like, well, why do you do that? It doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It just means that you can pressure test. Is this something that we should be doing? Are we a travel schedule, or the amount of hours we ask people to work, or how on we need to be with our phones and responsiveness? If somebody comes in and questions that, it's a great opportunity for you as a leader to say, well, I don't know why we do that. Or
say more about that.
We do this because, and justify it because they actually have thought it out, and it's something that's a healthy thing, healthy behavior that they've done. I remember our mutual friend, Chris, when she and I started working together like 15 years ago, she left a really toxic workplace, like horrifically toxic workplace. And where we were working at the time, and our team, our leader, it was super healthy by design. So when she came in, it took her 6 months to believe that what we were doing was normal. And if she kept asking over and over again, like, is this for real? Is this how we do things? It's like, yeah, this is how we do things. But she would ask those questions over and over again. And part of us, we were just like, yeah, this is you don't have to answer emails on the weekend, and you don't need to you don't have to have the Sunday scaries because we don't do stuff on Sundays here. And if we work late, it's planned for, but then we'll shave off some time, on a Friday afternoon, and you can go home early. Like, that was so anti what she was used to. So she came in and asked all the questions, which allowed us to be able to embrace her and say, no, this is what we designed. This is healthy and normal. It's not always like that. But if you're a leader and somebody new comes into your team and they're asking questions and you're like, I don't even know why we do that, or they're questioning, is this a healthy thing or not? It's a great opportunity for you to then retool. Why do we do this? And maybe reset the standards and sort of operating rhythm that your team has.
And I love that you said that, because there's a couple different things I want to emphasize there. One, for Chris, she probably was experiencing some PTSD, some habitual things from her old job.
1,000%. She's healed. She's healed people. We're good now. Yes. But oh my gosh.
So for that leader to understand that that's what she's coming from, that's her baggage, and that's okay. But to understand that maybe sometimes, and I'm generalizing here with other people too, not just Chris, but they might be doing things because of their previous environment, not just because of yours. And so to understand that about someone is critical. So that's one thing. The other thing, and this, you triggered something for me, which is we asked, how do you know you're in a toxic environment? For me, I remember being in one of those and a new employee coming in and asking a lot of questions. Why do we do this? Or why is that done that way? Or wait, I don't feel comfortable doing that. And me being the loyal employee and being in that jar for so long, I was very defensive and explained away a lot of what we did. And eventually I was like, wait, I was more because I was aware, because I taught these practices
Right.
to be like, wait, this isn't right. Like, and that was kind of the first moments you asked, like, when did I know it was toxic? I think that looking back, yes, when I was out of it, but I think those were the first signs for me to say, wait, is this really right?
Look, I think there are plenty of places where you could work that you think what you're doing is totally normal. And as soon as you describe your work environment, your work schedule, your management or leadership kind of dynamic, how people treat each other, just your colleagues, your peers. And if anybody says, whoa, that's weird, that seems hard, I could never do that, that's not normal. Gosh, I could never work in a place like that. Should be your first clue. I mean, look, if you're somebody who's a Navy SEAL, Special Forces, whatever, like we love you folks, and we expect that you're going to go in and do some like hard, dangerous, weird, and toxic environments because that's the job. But everybody else who is in corporate America, everybody else who's consuming corporate baggage here, all of your baggage does not belong in a toxic environment. So when anybody says, oh my God, really? You have to do that? That sounds awful. That sounds really hard. That sounds, I could never do that. That should be your ding, ding, ding clue that maybe you are in a toxic environment. I'm not saying that's a fail safe litmus test, but that should give you some clues to say, is that normal?
Just get curious.
Should I do that? I was talking to somebody recently who is on like a little vacation and was being made fun of by the other people who were on vacation with them because they couldn't put their phone down, because they couldn't sit down, because they were on calls and they were doing things at a time when everybody was just really there to relax and hang out together. And yeah, that should let you know that either you're in a toxic environment or you have been accultured by,
yes,
I think that's a word, right? Is that a word?
Indoctrinated.
Yes, better word, indoctrinated by a toxic environment. So now you picked up those habits and you're bringing them into whatever it is that you're doing now.
Yeah, and to be clear, emphasize another thing you said, which is like we're talking to the corporate everyday employees.
Yeah, special forces,
because
doing the hard, gnarly shit.
Yeah,
we love that. But please, like, that is not what should be happening if you're working for like a random accounting firm or
a hard day in my corporate job is not the same as a trauma center. It's just not the same.
Exactly.
So yeah, that is super clear. But I think for leaders, let's really think about the CEO, the executive leader, even our director level, senior level people. If someone is asking those questions, it is your job to engage in the conversation, get curious back, and to level up your awareness. To say, wait, is this right? Or not right, but is this in the environment that I want to create? Or have I just been in it so long? And it's really important to leverage those fresh eyes because they're only good for so long. And at any point, you can lead the charge on a reset, because you said something really important earlier, which is we just do these things and they evolve over time. No one comes in saying, I want to build a toxic culture.
I hope not.
Right? So one day you might wake up and say, I've either built or I'm a part of something that doesn't feel like what I want it to be anymore. And that's okay. You didn't fail. What you do next matters, though. At any point you could say, I want to reset. I want to listen to my people. I want to understand what's going on. And I can make slow changes to the root causes of what's going on to shift the ship a little bit. At any point, you could do that, but you have to have the awareness and the willingness to go there, in which a lot of people and leaders do not.
So I think what it boils down to is there's got to be like a small set of questions or a rubric or something that people can take with them to say, okay, so what do I do about this? Like, or how do I know I'm in a toxic environment, Whitney and Catie? Some of the questions I think I might ask are, did we create this or did we learn this?
Mm-hmm.
So did we create the meeting schedule, the cadences, the way that we write emails, the way that we meet with people, the way that we deliver service? Did we create that because that's what was here before? Or did we create that intentionally, or did we adopt it because that was what was here before? Mm-hmm. So being really clear about like, what are we carrying forward that's really helpful or not?
And who was at the center of that? Was it the customer? Was it the employer? Or was it dictated to you?
Yeah, or did it come from a leader that was here like 5 years ago, and that's the way that we've always done it?
Mm-hmm.
Or is this right? Is this we do it because it's the right? It's part of our brand, or it's ultimately customer centric, but like really getting into questioning why do we do it this way in the first place, or where did that come from? How did we start doing it that way?
What else? You were going to go to number 2.
Oh, I have like.
Did you miss it?
I have like several.
Okay.
The next one is, so going back to surveys, like I know that people have a lot of allergies to culture surveys and what's in there, but they can give us some clues about, especially when you get into the qualitative data, when people have open-ended responses about where we have holes in our game, where we've got a stale culture, a stale environment, or just an environment that's oppressive and we didn't think it was. Like it used to work for us a couple of years ago and it doesn't now. And I worry a lot about this, especially because we're 5 years, quote unquote, post-COVID, really maybe 4 years post-COVID. And we've adopted a lot of new habits and rituals in workplaces that served us then to keep things afloat, to keep things moving, and they don't serve us anymore. And so when we look at those surveys, we're not looking to high five the company that's taking it going, you did amazing. We're looking for where can everything be up leveled. So really questioning who we are and what we're trying to do and what the culture really is, and trying to get a good line of sight of that.
100%. And I think there's a big distinction, because I do think people have an allergy to the traditional culture survey. So while I do think that you should have a good pulse on how your people feel throughout the year, not an annual survey, I also think what we're talking about is more of an organizational audit. So what's actually going on in our organization? And I'm doing that from a place of care versus punishment. And then how do I keep a pulse regularly? So if you're doing if you're attempting to do any sort of reset, or you think that there might be something going on that you want to learn more about, I would take the angle more of a, let me get information versus I need to check the box of a survey, because there is a distinction to that, I believe.
Yeah, nobody really wants like to feel like, oh, well, we did the survey and it looked good and so we're fine.
Right.
There has to be an appetite for continuous improvement. So people really need to feel like it's okay to say, we used to do the staff meeting every third Monday and it's not working for us now. Can we change it? And that seems like a really stupid little thing, but I've seen companies especially the last few years post-COVID, change how they do celebrations, recognition, how they do gatherings, just generally with everyone else, what the expectations are around travel, the expectations of like what they do when they're together in person in work environments. And so it's, as a leader, I think you've got to cultivate that appetite for changing things because the world continues to change, or the environment changes, the customers or the clients we have continue to change. And you've got to question, is this behavior that we're doing normal? I think it's really hard to do when you're the person who's leading it. I think it's like, this is one of those places where the leader really needs to encourage other people to basically tell the emperor when they have no clothes on that things are not working for them, that the environment is really what is clogging their drain. The environment is the thing that's making them not as productive, not as happy, not as fulfilled, not as healthy as you talked about before. But that has to come from the leader, really welcoming the employees to say, this isn't really working for us, but we could tell you what is.
And the honest conversations, that relationship has to be there to have those on both sides.
That's right.
So let's carry that into part 2, which is going to be all around how to spot a toxic coworker and how to manage that.
Those are my favorite.
Yeah.
Toxic coworkers.
So great. So less about the environment, more about the people. But yeah, it's all about the culture and where we're working. We're spending most of our time at work. So why not make it a great place to be?
Amen, sister.
Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers.